The monitor in room 7 beeped 3 times in a row, and Naomi Sinclair grabbed the cold metal rail of her hospital bed so hard her knuckles turned white. She had not slept in 31 hours. She had not eaten. She had barely breathed since the doctors had rushed her into emergency surgery 6 hours ago, cutting her open to save 2 lives that were too small and too fragile and too early to survive on their own. Now those 2 tiny bodies were somewhere down the hall, behind glass, connected to machines she did not understand, and a nurse had just told her, in the softest possible voice, the kind of voice people use when they are afraid of what the words will do, that one of the twins was struggling, that her daughter's oxygen levels were dropping, that they were doing everything they could. And the first person Naomi called was her mother. The phone rang 4 times. When her mother finally picked up, Naomi could hear music in the background, a bass line, laughter, the clink of glasses. "Mom," her voice cracked on the single syllable. "Mom, I need you to come. Something is wrong with one of the babies. They are saying she might not—" "Naomi." Her mother's voice was pleasant and slightly impatient, the way it always was when Naomi interrupted something important. "Can this wait? Your sister is about to cut the engagement cake." Naomi stopped breathing. "What?" "We'll call you back in the morning." The line went dead. Naomi sat in that hospital bed, post-operative, alone, terrified, and stared at the blank screen of her phone. The monitor beeped again. Somewhere down the hall, her daughter was fighting for her life, and her mother had just asked if it could wait. That was the night Naomi Sinclair stopped being the daughter who waited. To understand why that moment destroyed something in her that could never be repaired, you have to understand what it meant to grow up as the other Sinclair daughter, not the one people looked at when they walked into a room, not the one strangers complimented unprompted, not the one their parents introduced with that particular pride in their voices, the kind that made the chest puff out and the eyes go bright. Naomi was the older one by 4 years. She was quiet where Bianca was loud. She was steady where Bianca was dramatic. She studied while Bianca performed, and she worked while Bianca was celebrated, and she built things quietly while Bianca announced things grandly, and their parents spent 30 years making sure both girls understood exactly which one of them mattered. It was never announced directly. That was the cruelest part. It was communicated in 100 small transactions that individually seemed meaningless but accumulated over decades into something enormous and suffocating. It was the year Naomi graduated with honors from Westfield High, and her parents missed the ceremony because Bianca had a regional dance competition that same afternoon. It was the birthday when Naomi had been saving her gift money for a class trip and came home to find her mother had borrowed it, just temporarily, to cover Bianca's costume fees. It was every dinner where her achievements were acknowledged with a brief nod before the conversation pivoted back to whatever Bianca was currently doing, currently planning, currently needing. "You are so strong, Naomi," her mother used to say. "You do not need as much." She had believed it for a long time. She had built her entire identity around not needing as much, around being low maintenance, around handling her own problems so quietly that no one ever felt inconvenienced by them. She had mistaken endurance for strength and silence for dignity, and she had paid for that mistake with 30 years of invisible suffering. Then she met Ethan Caldwell at a mutual friend's rooftop gathering in the summer, and for the first time in her adult life, someone looked at her like she was the one worth looking at. Ethan was a structural engineer with kind eyes and a laugh that arrived fully and without apology. He was also the most consistent human being Naomi had ever encountered. He called when he said he would call. He showed up when he said he would show up. He remembered the small things she mentioned in passing and brought them back weeks later in ways that made her feel genuinely seen. They married 2 years after meeting. Her parents attended, and Bianca was the maid of honor, and Bianca's toast somehow became a 15-minute story about Bianca's own romantic life that left Naomi laughing softly in the front row, because what else do you do? Ethan had squeezed her hand under the table and leaned close and said, "You are the only one in this room I'm looking at," and she had loved him completely for that. What followed were hard years in a different way. Naomi wanted children desperately, and her body refused to cooperate easily. There were 2 miscarriages in 3 years. There were fertility consultations and hormone treatments, and nights when she cried in the bathroom with the shower running so Ethan wouldn't hear her. She did not tell her parents about the miscarriages for months. When she finally did, her mother said, "These things happen," and then spent 10 minutes on the phone describing Bianca's new apartment. When the fertility treatments finally worked, when Naomi sat in the doctor's office and heard not 1 heartbeat, but 2, she wept in a way she had not wept in years. Not from grief, from something that felt almost dangerous. It felt like hope. She let herself believe the pregnancy might change things. She let herself imagine that becoming a mother, that giving her parents grandchildren might finally shift something in the family dynamic. She told herself that her parents would show up for this, that this time they would choose her. She should have known better. The sign was there, as clear as anything, at her baby shower. The shower was held at a rented event space downtown, and Naomi had spent weeks looking forward to it. Ethan's mother and her college friends had organized everything beautifully. Soft yellow and white balloons, a cake with 2 tiny fondant babies on top, a table of games, and a wall of photos from Naomi's pregnancy. It was the first time in as long as she could remember that an entire room of people had gathered specifically for her. She was opening gifts when Bianca stood up.
"Sorry to interrupt," Bianca said, in the voice she used when she was not sorry at all. She held up her left hand and the diamond caught every light in the room. "Darren proposed last night. We are engaged." The room erupted. It genuinely erupted. Guests who had been sitting in a circle around Naomi's unwrapped gifts turned immediately, pivoting like sunflowers toward a brighter light, and within 60 seconds, the energy of the entire shower had migrated to the corner where Bianca stood glowing with her hand extended. Naomi's mother rushed to Bianca's side and grabbed her hands and began crying. "Oh, sweetheart! Oh, my goodness! Let me see it!" Naomi sat in the center of the room with a half-opened box of onesies in her lap and watched her celebration dissolve. She finished opening gifts quietly. She ate a small piece of her cake. She thanked everyone for coming. She smiled until her face ached, and she filed the moment away in a part of herself she was running out of room in. 6 weeks later, Naomi went into labor 8 weeks early. It happened fast, and then it happened terrifyingly. One moment she was sitting on the edge of the bed, and the next she was calling Ethan, who was on a work flight to Houston, and then she was in an ambulance, and then there were bright lights and voices above her, and someone telling her to breathe and to hold on, and that they were almost there. Ethan was already turning around. He was trying to get back. He kept texting her between connections. "I am coming. I am on the way. Hold on." Doctors performed an emergency cesarean. There was significant blood loss. There were complications she did not fully understand until days later, when a physician sat down and explained them calmly, and her hands would not stop shaking even though she was trying to stay composed. The twins were born alive, a boy and a girl. They weighed 3 pounds each. They were immediately transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit, where they were placed in separate incubators and connected to monitors and ventilators and IV lines that looked impossibly large against their impossibly small bodies. Naomi named them Lena and Cade. And then the nurse came in and said that Lena's oxygen levels were dropping, and they were watching it closely, and they might need to intervene, and Naomi picked up her phone and called her mother. You already know how that ended. What happened next, after the call, was this. Naomi put the phone down on the bedside table and did not pick it up again for 4 hours. She did not cry, she did not call back. A nurse came in and sat with her and held her hand when the fear became too large to hold alone, and Ethan landed in Atlanta on a layover and called her sobbing, and she told him quietly that she was okay, that the babies were stable, that he should get on the next flight and she would be here when he landed. Lena had a crisis at 2 in the morning. The medical team intervened quickly and with extraordinary skill, and by 4 in the morning her levels had stabilized, and the on-call neonatologist came and told Naomi that she was going to be okay, that both of them were going to be okay. Naomi thanked the doctor and then turned to the window and looked out at the dark hospital parking lot and let herself feel what she needed to feel, which was not relief, though she felt that too. It was the cold, clarifying recognition of a truth she had been refusing to accept for 30 years. They were never going to choose her, not because they did not love her, perhaps, but because it would never occur to them that a choice was being made. Ethan arrived at 5:45 in the morning. He crossed the room in 4 steps and wrapped his arms around her and held on, and she let him, and for a long time neither of them said anything. "Your parents?" he finally asked. Naomi said, "They came this morning, for about 40 minutes. My mother asked if she could hold Lena, and I said the NICU does not allow visitors without clearance. She left at noon for Bianca's engagement brunch." Ethan pulled back and looked at her face. "Naomi." Naomi said, "I am okay." And she meant it in the most chilling possible way. She was not okay the way she used to be okay, which was suppressed and aching and hoping someone would notice. She was okay in a new way, a resolved way, the kind of okay that comes when the thing you were afraid of finally happens and you survive it and realize the fear was the worst part.
She did not call her parents to update them about the twins. She did not call Bianca. When her mother texted 3 days later asking how the babies were doing, Naomi waited 2 days to respond and kept the message brief. Ethan noticed. He did not push her to do differently. He understood what was happening in the quiet way he understood most things about her. Cade and Lena stayed in the NICU for 6 weeks. Naomi was there every single hour for every possible hour, learning their sounds and their rhythms, and the particular way Lena kicked when she was overstimulated, and the way Cade calmed down when she pressed her palm flat against the incubator glass so he could sense the warmth. She learned the names of every nurse on the unit. She brought coffee for the night staff. She read to the twins through the porthole openings in the incubators, children's books and passages from novels, and sometimes just her own thoughts, narrated quietly, because the neonatologist had said that her voice was already helping them regulate. Her parents visited twice more before the twins came home. Both times they stayed less than an hour. Both times her mother said something about how small they still were, as if smallness were an inconvenience. Both times they left to be somewhere else. Naomi served them coffee. She was pleasant. She did not perform warmth, and she did not perform coldness. She was simply, efficiently, herself. When the twins finally came home, bundled into their car seats for the first time, something settled inside Naomi that had never been settled before. She looked at those 2 faces, at Lena's serious dark eyes and Cade's round, startled expression, and she understood with total clarity what her priority structure was going to be for the rest of her life. It did not include begging for love that was not freely given. Over the following year, Naomi stopped calling first. She had always been the one who called first, the one who organized the holidays, the one who sent the birthday cards and remembered the anniversaries, and tried to create connection through sheer, sustained effort. She stopped. She answered when her parents called, politely, warmly, briefly. She stopped attending every extended family event that Bianca's schedule dictated. She stopped explaining her decisions and stopped apologizing for her absences, and stopped performing the emotional labor of holding a family that had never once held her. Her parents barely noticed at first, and that, more than anything, confirmed exactly what she had always suspected. Meanwhile, she was building something. During the 6 weeks the twins were in the NICU and through the long recovery period that followed, Naomi had started sketching designs. She had always had a talent for it, for pattern and color and the particular aesthetic sensibility that made something beautiful in a functional way. She had worked in graphic design for years, quietly and competently for a company that had underpaid her since 2018. During the NICU nights, sitting in the waiting area with a notebook in her lap, she had started designing children's clothing. Soft things, practical things with thoughtful details, hidden snaps, expandable cuffs, colors that held up through washing. Things she wished she had access to when she was shopping for the twins. By the time Lena and Cade turned 1, she had a small online shop. By the time they turned 2, she had quit her job. By the time they turned 3, Sinclair & Co. Children had a waiting list for new seasonal drops and a wholesale partnership with 4 boutiques across the country. She had not told her parents about any of it. They found out through Bianca, which meant they found out too late and at the worst possible moment. Bianca's engagement had lasted 8 months before Darren left. He left quietly, left her the apartment lease, left without drama, and Bianca had processed his departure by doubling down on the influencer identity she had been constructing since her early 20s. The followers, the sponsored posts, the carefully curated images of a life that looked effortless and expensive. For a while it worked. For a while the numbers climbed and the brand deals came in, and Bianca Sinclair of the lifestyle page that projected luxury and ease seemed entirely credible. Then the cracks appeared. A former collaborator made a post, then a second one. Receipts surfaced, screenshots of private messages, unpaid agreements, a charity campaign whose funds had been redirected. The sponsors began canceling quietly, one by one, which is how brands always expressed their displeasure. The follower count began its slow erosion, and Bianca, who had built an entire identity around an image that was now publicly unraveling, went to the only people who had ever unconditionally rescued her: their parents. But their parents had been quietly funding Bianca's lifestyle for years in ways Naomi did not know about, ways she did not know about until her grandmother, Loretta Caldwell, 73 years old and done with keeping secrets, sat down with Naomi at a family dinner and told her everything. "Your college fund," Loretta said, without preamble or ceremony. "They used most of it when Bianca needed to cover a debt in her second year of school. They replaced what they could, but not all of it. You took out loans, and you thought it was your own financial situation. It was not." Naomi put her fork down. "There was also the inheritance from your grandfather Sinclair. It was supposed to be split equally. Bianca received hers when she turned 25. Yours was extended, managed on your behalf, they said, used several times to cover Bianca's shortfalls." Naomi's voice, when it came, was very quiet. "How long have you known this?" Loretta reached across the table and covered Naomi's hand with her own. "Long enough that I am ashamed it took me this long to say it out loud. I am saying it now." Naomi sat with that information for 3 days before she allowed herself to feel it fully. Not the rage, which was there, enormous and controlled, but the thing underneath the rage, which was grief. Grief for the version of herself who had struggled financially during years when she should not have had to. Grief for the loans she had paid off slowly and the opportunities she had declined because she believed she could not afford them. Grief for the way the financial disadvantage had been layered invisibly on top of the emotional disadvantage, compounding it, deepening the hole she had climbed out of entirely on her own. She did not confront her parents immediately. She was deliberate about this. There was nothing to be gained from an explosion. She had learned that lesson from decades of watching Bianca generate drama and receive attention for it. Naomi was not interested in being loud. She was interested in being clear. Her parents came to her house on a Saturday in October. They had been calling more frequently over the preceding weeks, and the messages had grown more urgent. Bianca needed help. The situation was difficult. Family was family. Her mother had mentioned, with transparent casualness, that she had heard through someone that Naomi was doing quite well professionally. They stood in her entryway, looking at the house, at the clean lines of it, the warmth, the art on the walls that Naomi had chosen carefully, the children's drawings framed and hung in the hallway, and something shifted in their expressions that she recognized and had no patience for. "The children are with Ethan's mother today," Naomi said. "Sit down." They sat at the kitchen table. Her mother looked around the kitchen with an admiring expression that arrived a few years too late. "Your sister is in a very difficult position," her father began. "I know," Naomi said. "She needs support right now, financial, emotional. The family needs to—" "Dad," she said it simply, without heat, "I need to ask you something and I need you to answer me honestly." She paused. "Did you use my college fund to cover Bianca's debts?" The kitchen went very quiet. Her mother's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Her father looked at the table. "It was complicated," her mother finally said. "We always intended—" "Did you use it? Yes or no?" Her father nodded once, barely, at the table. "And the inheritance from Grandpa Sinclair?" Another silence. Her mother clasped her hands together. "We were going to make it right. There just was never a good time." Naomi looked at both of them for a long moment. She was not shaking. She was not raising her voice. She had spent years watching them mistake her steadiness for indifference, and she was done correcting that misreading. "I want to tell you something, and I want you to hear it not as an accusation, but as an accurate description of what happened." She spoke evenly and clearly. "I grew up in this family believing that I did not need very much. I believed that because that is what you told me and I trusted you. I worked harder than I needed to work for opportunities that should not have been funded already. I took out loans I should not have needed. I struggled financially during years when I was also struggling emotionally, and I did all of that quietly because that is what strength looked like." Her father looked up. There were tears starting in his eyes. She did not soften. "I almost lost both of my children. I was alone in a hospital room after emergency surgery, and I called Mom, and she told me Bianca was cutting her engagement cake and asked if it could wait. I let that sit. That was not the first time, and I finally understand it was not going to be the last." Her mother reached across the table. "Naomi, we love you. I know you do, in your way. But love that consistently chooses someone else is not love I can build my life around anymore." Her mother's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, a reflex, and I saw the name, Bianca. "Go ahead," Naomi said. "Take it." Her mother looked up quickly. "I do not have to." "No, genuinely." Naomi stood up and began clearing her coffee cup from the table. "Take it, but I want you to think about something while you do." She paused at the kitchen counter and turned around. "Bianca is calling because she needs something. She probably needs it today, and you will drop everything because that is what you have always done." She was not angry. She was simply stating coordinates. "That is fine, but you are going to leave here and go take care of her, and when you come back, if you come back, the door will still be open. My children will still not know your names well enough to find you in a lineup, and I will be here, building the life I built without any help from anyone in this family, and I will be fine." She said it without bitterness. She meant every word. Her father stood up. He looked aged in a way that had nothing to do with years. "We did our best," he said.
Naomi looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said softly. "You did your best for Bianca. I just learned to survive without you." The silence that followed that sentence was the loudest thing she had ever heard. They left 20 minutes later. Her mother hugged her at the door in the way she always had, arms that arrived and departed quickly, more gesture than warmth. Naomi did not chase the hug or extend it. She closed the front door and leaned her back against it and stood in the hallway of the home she had built, listening to the particular Saturday afternoon quiet of a house where children were temporarily absent, and felt something she had not expected to feel. Not victory, not grief, not rage. Peace. The particular peace of a woman who has finally stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing herself. Ethan came home at 4 with the twins. Lena ran through the front door first, as always, small and purposeful and slightly louder than any room expected. Cade came in behind her, calmer, looking for Naomi with the patient certainty of a child who has always known exactly where she will be. "Mama!" He found her in the kitchen doorway and crossed to her without announcement, pressing his face into her side in the specific way that never failed to rearrange everything inside her. She put her hand on top of his head. Lena was already talking, about something Grandma Caldwell had said, about a dog she had seen in the park, about a game she wanted to play before dinner. Ethan caught Naomi's eye from across the hallway and read her face the way he always did, and she gave him the smallest nod that communicated everything and nothing that needed to be said out loud. Months passed, then a year. Her parents called more frequently for a while, then less. Bianca's online presence contracted to almost nothing, a dormant account, occasionally updated with tentative content that bore no resemblance to the confident, curated life she used to project. Naomi heard through Loretta that Bianca had moved back into her parents' house, that things were difficult, that there were conversations happening about what came next. She wished Bianca no cruelty, she genuinely did not, but she also did not go. She sent a brief message when she heard, "I hope things get easier," and left it at that. She was not her sister's rescue, and she was done pretending otherwise. What she was this: a mother, a business owner, a wife, a woman who had survived things she should not have had to survive alone and come out the other side of them with something that no amount of favoritism or neglect could touch. She had built a life that was hers in every possible way, hers by choice, hers by effort, hers by the stubborn refusal to disappear even when everyone around her had acted as though she had. Her parents visited the following spring. They called ahead this time, which was new, and she let them come. They sat in the living room, and Cade regarded them with the polite caution of a child meeting adults he has encountered only a handful of times. Lena, bolder, asked Naomi's mother what her name was. Her mother blinked. "I am your grandmother, sweetheart." Lena considered this with the 4-year-old's terrifying directness. "We do not see you very much." Naomi's mother looked up from her grandchild's face to her daughter's, and in her expression was something Naomi recognized, not quite comprehension, but the beginning of it. The way a person looks when they finally understand the shape of what they lost by not paying attention. Naomi watched her mother's eyes fill and did not rush to fill the silence. Her father, on the couch beside her mother, reached over and took his wife's hand. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing left to say that would change the arithmetic of 30 years. Later, after her parents had gone and the twins were in bed, Naomi stood at the kitchen window with a glass of water and looked out at the dark yard. Ethan came to stand beside her, his shoulder pressed against hers. "How do you feel?" he asked. She thought about it honestly. "Like myself," she said. "Just fully like myself, finally." He turned and kissed her temple, and she leaned into it. Outside, the neighbors had left a porch light on. Somewhere in the dark, a car passed. The house was quiet and warm, and entirely, completely hers. She had spent 30 years waiting to be seen by people who were always looking somewhere else. She had finally stopped waiting. And the extraordinary thing, the thing she had not expected and could not have predicted, was that once she stopped waiting to be chosen, she discovered she had already been choosing herself all along. In every small act of survival, in every loan repaid, and miscarriage grieved alone, an NICU night endured, and business decision made with shaking hands and confident voice, she had been choosing herself. She had just not had the clarity to call it that. Her parents had spent years teaching her she would always come second, so she stopped waiting to be chosen. And that was when everything changed.
Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed the story, do not forget to like and subscribe for more.